Art. An artwork. What is art? What can it be? How can we possibly know if it is more than human? These are the questions we will explore.
Integralis Artis San Paco here at your service. Let's begin with this artistically flexible analysis that's not entirely conclusive. Why? Because art, aesthetics, and taste change over times and places. It's aesthetics we'll be looking into first, a branch of philosophy.
It deals with and covers the nature of beauty, art, and taste.
Personally, I see art as a vision.
A creative, expressive, manifested and crafted vision. So creativity, emotional expression, and craft or practice integrated form a desired vision that can be shared through many and any mediums, be it music, visual arts, performance, etc. From this we can say that creative expression can lead to tastes. That expressive practice and craft can lead to the techniques that make up artworks. And that the creative craft and practices form ideas and ideals that reflect our vision. So where does beauty come into place? Some would say it doesn't, others say it has to. I would say it's just another part of the whole thing. Depending on where it's used, beauty and what it makes something beautiful and attractive, what we typically define as aesthetic, can be anywhere from our particular tastes to the elements and principles of art and practices, to the ideal standards that we create or are fed to us through media, tradition, and culture. As artists, it's something we can play with, to make an artwork appealing and attractive if we wish it to be. We place beauty as a technique, embodying all the elements and the principles of art in a harmonious way. Through this, as artists, we can become able to embrace, innovate, or change the ideal standards of beauty and, quite literally, do it in style. For every time we decide that each part of anything is beautiful or pleasing, it becomes our tastes that guide our style if we let it. To do so is a daring proposition. It's easy to follow a proven path that is already attractive to many. Some styles take more time and effort than others to learn, but it becomes harder to stand out individually within them. This is why it might take 4 years to learn to paint classically, but it will take a lifetime to genuinely be you, to embody your original style, and play with reality, beauty, appeal, and all those things in a seamlessly natural way. To be your own, be creative. So what is it exactly? Creativity. Since it is an essential part of art, something that feels so close to it, far more than technique and often a shining emotional expression. It is at the heart of the discussion when it comes to recent events in tech and art. I would say that creativity is being evaluated and discussed more than the definitions of art itself. Why is that? Maybe because it's closer to our minds. It's an intrinsic part of our intelligence, which is of course not referring to book smarts or well-informed knowledge, just the cause of it. Our whole independent, self-conscious, intentional mind that's ever developing, and we don't know how it works. But occasionally we catch just a glimpse of it, the tip of the iceberg. This is why I say it's not enough to form a definite conclusion. When we're left with just the glimpses of reality, everything becomes a theory, an article of faith. It's easy to assume and suppose that we are right, than admit that we could err. But it's only through trial and error that we actually learn and catch these glimpses of truth. And it seems that the more we do, the more we can think outside the box, with imagination, innovating ideas, and approaching things with originality. That is creativity, theoretically. So our undefined intelligence takes our creative imagination to manifest and craft attractively or interestingly something we envision. Why? What is the importance of emotional expression in art? It feels overlooked and demeaned in the public discussion. But it's central to the artists and art lovers, and its significance shouldn't go unnoticed. We express emotions in art to communicate and reflect our desires, our dislikes, our fears, our condition, our hopes, our dreams, our nightmares, our wonders, our joy, our pleasures, our discomforts, and our values. Through these we connect to others and show ideas, transform our physical reality, tell stories, persuade, promote, comfort and console, entertain and learn. What are letters, names and numbers? These are just things we created after art. When we felt the need to elaborate what we wanted, we made connections, simplified and innovated. It may sound all very functional. What if you just enjoy art for art's sake, with no purpose, point or meaning? Well, you are still enjoying it, and that becomes your meaning and point. For me, art is innately meaningful because life is innately meaningful. To express the energy we have the best way we can for the good of all is, to me, true living rather than just existing. How art began, and if there's a purpose behind it, reminds me of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato and his famous allegory of the cave. In a sense, art gives a solution to this allegory of the human condition. In the story, a group of people are chained in a cave and can only see shadows on the wall in front of them. They mistake these shadows for reality and have no knowledge of the outside world. One of these prisoners is freed and sees the world outside the cave for the first time, then realizes that what they thought was reality was actually just an illusion. and that there's a whole new world to explore. Eager, the freed prisoner, came back to tell the others this, but then is mocked by them and not believed. They even warn that if they could, they would harm those who tried to drag them out of the cave. It's a metaphor for the process of insight and the journey towards knowledge and truth. It says that many people are trapped in their own illusions, and that we need to be freed in order to discover the true nature of reality. Something we have mentioned we can only catch a glimpse of, but Plato thought he could identify it in his world of forms he envisioned, excluding the senses as illusions. This is why, although he argued that art should focus on bringing truth, beauty, and goodness into the world, in his utopia it would be outlawed because he distrusts the power it had at changing these and affecting the senses. Where it connects to our caveman past and the origins of art is in the solution to the problem. How do you convince others of what you saw outside the cave? You create shadows on the wall. Images that show them what you saw change what they see and hope to see more of it. It's theorized that in the Ice Age, the reason why we began making images of the world around us was because in the sensory-deprived landscapes, caves and dwellings, any glimpse of something new in the horizon, be it unfamiliar animal, light, or natural change, began affecting our brains to hallucinate and dream. Like the freed prisoner of the allegory, it felt like an entire different reality. But in this case, it was a shared experience. With the already gathered skills of leaving a mark on the world, they began leaving a mark of this new world in their minds, a vision. Those that had the most visions were often the most secluded, treated as mystics of what they now saw as the spirit world. They became the first shamans. From them, the images would begin to represent all emotional expressions of a community, their beliefs, their values, unifying them into organized tribes that would later settle and bring forth civilizations. This is the emotional power of art. Art has changed and continues to change the world. It's not our fault that in this hyper-specialized, isolated and divisive world, we've forgotten and overlooked the power of art and its emotional impact. Those that see it have everything to gain from it. From the power of appearances to individuated identity to personal fulfillment, our subconscious desires, our unconscious wonders, and our conscious personality. Art becomes the flourishing of humanity. Art is the facade of truth, an emotional mirror, and the window to our minds. It bridges the perceived and the conceptual parts of our lives with anything creative that expresses a manifested vision. But who then has the authority to say what is art? Is it the artists, the general public, the history of the tradition and culture? I think it's all three, integrated in an interesting setup where one can't overrule the other two forever, guaranteeing that all of them have a say on what is considered an artwork or not. For example, if the historic tradition is overbearing, the artists and public will eventually change their tastes. This is what happened to Gothic art when Giotto and other artists began to deviate into a more emotional and realistic style that a public showed great interest towards. By it, the Renaissance began. Or what happened to the academically classical art in the 1800s. It dominated and stifled creativity and lessened realistic interactions of the world till artists like Monet literally opened the doors towards modern art to reflect and express the modern world people were living through. If the artist becomes overbearing at defining art, then the public and history will change the taste of art. This is what happened to Rembrandt and the generational shift he lived through at the end of his life, where history changed the desires of the public he faced. But though poor and no longer appreciated as he once was, he still kept his uncompromising vision. We can adapt and change with the times, but at what point do we compromise our identity, originality, and vision? The public that enjoys art can dominate its definition too, and when they do for long, the artist and history will change it. We can look to Jacques-Louis David for that. Inspired by Greco-Roman history, he changed his elitist style and became the summit of neoclassicism that would hectically inspire and embody the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Age. And so all these three spheres, the artists, the public, and the history, determine what is a work of art or not. A book may be presented as a work of art by an artist, but if other artists and the public don't see it as a work of art, and if there isn't any similar example in the history of the medium that is remembered, then it's not a work of art. Until one of the first two changed their minds and include it in the history of art. The artist, the public, and history work to preserve and consolidate art in a never-ending, progressively evolving fashion. The never-ending growth part of art is what makes some art great. Great art frees the creative mind, puts us in equal level with those that try to express themselves and craft an ideal or vision progressively. But if someone pours everything related to that absolutely into a work, they have nothing else left to say. Our ideals, our values and visions, if we believe we've reached them and have completely expressed them, like our assumptions, stifle our creativity. Like Socrates, we'd be better knowing that we know nothing. But in the glimpses of truth, we can make our vision as perfect as we want, not fearing if we fall short from it, but if we don't aim high enough. For we can never reach perfection. If we do, we are most likely wrong and delusional, or we don't have anywhere else to go from there. So art remains unfinished, abandoned at a point we choose. To move on to the next work and constantly improve and evolve our vision and ourselves with it. Excellence, in a way, is not about efficient, technically productive delivery. It's about an enduring process and experience of continuous growth and fulfillment. In art, you can make a destination, a journey to enjoy, and a path to start, and it's always worth starting. And what is there left to say? In art, we may say everything with as little as possible, since an image is worth 1,000 words, and what we see, hear, may be just another mere glimpse.
So art is the creative, expressive, manifested or crafted vision. I leave this mind map, vision, performance, and video up for your interpretation, if it is or not art. I hope that it brought some clarity and meaning from my perspective on the subject, based on my experiences, research, and journey as an artist. Integralis Artis Sam Paco here, reminding you to create.